All right. So if you want to start with introducing yourself, your name, what you do, and what you do for adventure.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Will Stevens. Currently, I am a go-to-market strategist and fractional leader for primarily B2B companies. Adventure? I have to be
Yeah.
adventurous. Sheesh.
I
These
mean, your
days,
adventure could be just like, quitting whatever your full-time job was before this if you had one
yeah,
as well.
I was laid off, so I was thrust into this world as a good thing. Not to be so like woo woo, but I think things do happen for a reason, and you make lemonade when life chucks lemons at your head. And yeah, it was a lot of learning experiences condensed into literally like 48 hours. So
Mhm.
I got laid off on like a Thursday, and by Monday I was working on my first client. So I was very
Wow.
fortunate to have former colleagues reach out to me saying like,
Yeah.
"Hey, sorry you got laid off. That always sucks, but we want to work with you. If you want projects, we got projects." I was like, "Sounds good. All right."
That's
Uh,
amazing.
so I was quite reactive to my adventure, but I put my shoulder into the adventure no less.
Hell yeah. That's amazing. I feel like a lot of people are experiencing layoffs right now and don't necessarily know what to do with that. And I mean, I experienced a similar, not the same, but I also got laid off, and that's why I went full time. I always wanted to go full time. I'd been freelancing part-time for 2 years, but I was like scared to go full time, even though my other job was literally just being a barista. It was just the fact that it was consistent income, even if it wasn't amazing. It was scary, but I also knew I wanted to travel full time. So I was like, you're gonna have to quit eventually. And then the layoff was like, well, now you have no excuse. Like, you have to make this work because how else are you gonna get paid? And I ended up tripling my income in just a couple of months, which is incredible. But at the same time, like, it's hard no matter when it happens, and it's scary. And if you've only ever been an employee before, your brain is like, what can I apply for to make this work? Rather than, like, that's when I really learned that it's not about applying for stuff, it's who you know and creating a network and building an actual business where, like, you're getting clients, you're not just like applying for gigs and doing the job that they hired you to do.
Absolutely. One of my solo podcast episodes, I talk about exactly that, where
Mm.
I think there's this false notion about like networking in general. I cringe and shrug my shoulders using that word because like there's a weirdness to it because it feels very just like value extracting or like, hey, the only reason I'm doing this is because I'm motivated by what I can get out of you. And I think
Mm.
not all the times, but it certainly is like stigmatized a little bit with you know some of that residue.
Hmm.
But it's not who you know; it's who knows you and what they're willing to do for you.
Yeah.
And that completely changes the lens with which you need to see the world and your relationships and your quote unquote network and opportunities. And the way to do that is just to do great work, be a good human, add more value than you extract,
Hmm.
and be there to kind of create your own luck and capitalize on opportunities that might come your way. But
Hmm.
yeah, just because you know somebody doesn't mean they can help you with anything.
Totally.
So yeah, you
Totally.
need to fill the cup up before you can pour from it, expecting to get yours.
Yeah, I like that phrase, create your own luck, because I feel like a lot of people are like waiting for something to happen and they're not pushing enough. Like, they're not following up enough, or they're not sending enough pitches or letters of introduction to begin with, or they're like, "Oh my god, how am I going to make enough money next month?" but not actually answering the question, "How am I going to make enough money next month?" Like, there's so many ways you can go about this. You can start by like analyzing the services you offer, how much they cost and how many hours they take, and seeing how many of those you could sell and how many clients you would need in order to like be good. There's like the puzzle piece part of it, but then there's also the like, how am I going to go out and get those clients? I'm going to send a ridiculous number of follow-ups. I'm going to like look for my ideal clients in the places where they hang out, and like going and taking that extra step of like finding it. Like I always say, I created my job, I created my position, I gave myself my job title. Like no one told me I was a freelance writer when I started. No one said that I was like ready to do freelance SEO strategy at any point. I just did it. I have no idea what I was doing, but I did it and my clients were perfectly happy and I figured everything out and it was fine. But I feel like when you've been an employee before, you're like kind of always waiting for permission or like the recognition, like something to be like, now you are this thing. Now you can do this thing. And it's like, actually, you just decide that, you create that.
Yeah. I think for better or worse, sometimes employee tracks can create this learned helplessness, and we're in these environments where our job security or our path to a promotion is when other people choose us. And a lot of people have probably been in positions where it's like they objectively performed better, but the other person got the promotion. So like, okay, you weren't chosen. When you're not an employee, you have to choose yourself. And this is like horrible grammar, but I like to say, if you don't do, you don't. Meaning, like, if you want the thing, you need to develop a plan to do the thing, but then you need to execute towards the thing. And if you didn't, you didn't. Like, it doesn't happen unless you do it. And don't take it personally if you fail or even if you win. You can get so full of yourself. But just like get out there with a plan and execute that plan. And it's way easier said than done. Like, don't listen don't listen to the gurus. This is hard. And like as cliche as it is, like if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Right.
It's not easy. And I know easy is relative compared to some people. Maybe this is just more in line with their strengths or the ambitions they came out of the womb with, whatever. But this is it could be a grind. So yeah, if you're grinding, don't be so hard on yourself. You're probably well calibrated to the experience because it's a hard one.
Yeah, I think there's also an aspect of experience as well that you realize eventually, like, oh, it does get easier. And you'll feel when it starts to get easier, but you won't notice. You know what I mean? Like, you'll start out and you'll be like, okay, I just am looking forward to the day where I'm just showing up to work and doing my job and going home because I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm tired of not knowing what I'm doing. Or you think about like that quarterly crisis that a lot of new entrepreneurs have where it's like every 3 months their contracts start to wrap up and they're like, oh my God, I need to get more clients and I need to make more money. How am I ever going to do that? And that is all going to get easier. The longer you do this, the more practice you have, because all of that brings more information. You're constantly receiving data that you're processing that's like, oh, this niche doesn't work for me. Oh, this one does. Oh, my industry is changing. Oh, this service I'm really good at. Oh, maybe I do need to follow up 7 times instead of just 3. Oh, this is definitely my ideal client. I feel very validated right now versus like, this client is garbage and I charged way too little for this project. Like all of these things are just experience and they add up to the information where you're like, oh, this is easy. And then eventually all of that information goes from this crazy distributed map to this very deep understanding that you can build a system off of where it's like, now it's smooth sailing for me. When I need clients, just go and follow up with people that are in my ideal clients list that are in a tracker that I built because of my experience. And now it's actually really easy for me to get clients. I get clients in like 2 to 4 weeks. But there was probably a year where I had already built that tracker. I already had all this information where I was still scared because I was used to being scared. And I would go into my tracker and I wouldn't believe that it was going to work. And I would panic and I would do it anyway. I would do the system anyway. And then it would work out. And that's what built the faith where now when I have a contract end or like it's April where we entered a new quarter, I didn't freak out this quarter at all. Even though my schedule wasn't completely full, I just went and did my system and I knew it'd work and it did work. And 2 weeks later, it's April 24th. Like I'm already good. And I did my taxes this month, you know? But like 6 years ago, 6 months ago. 6 years ago when I started, like, I did not look like this. I was like standing on my boyfriend's front lawn, like crying my eyes out, being like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. This is why I like these conversations, because I feel like they are more authentically representative of what most people go through. And I say most people because there's edge cases, and good for those people. Go and crush it. Like, some people
Yeah.
from their first minute, they land on their feet. They have that system just dialed in. The clients came to them for whatever reason, and like they never had to think about it. And
Mhm.
they're talented, but there may have been some luck there, right place, right time. I don't know. That will almost certainly not be you. Like don't count on that happening. And it's a very ongoing thing too. So like everything that you just covered, if we come back in a year and have this conversation, I bet you say something different. Like,
Totally.
that's just how it is. So
Yeah.
live with that. But yeah, it can, I mean, you get your identity can get wrapped up in a little bit too, because you can't hide behind the brand or the team or the
Mhm.
shitty manager or whatever it might have been. Like, it does kind of just come down to you, if you did
Mhm.
it or if you didn't do it. No excuses. There's probably plenty of them, but like, that didn't sign the contract.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's so easy for your self-worth to get wrapped up in it.
absolutely. Yeah. And then you can get a bit more emotionally connected to it, but you can't do that. You got to just
No.
remain stoic and objective and just treat it as a business, because it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard to do that though, when your livelihood depends on it and your face is the brand.
A bit more complicated.
Totally. So, we kind of talked about how you got started with your business, but I'd love to hear more. I mean, other than getting laid off, like, what is your motivation? Like, why are you working for yourself? What really drives you at the end of the day?
Mm. To put food on the table. So livelihood is one. Um, I joke that like I've yet to monetize drinking coffee and taking my dog for walks on the beach. If anyone wants to pay me, sold. Make me a deal.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, yeah, livelihood. But also life is short. I think, I was reacting to being thrust into this world and going out on my own. So I think I just initially I said yes to it, and it's been really, really hard. A lot of stuff hasn't worked, and I've been able to stick it out. I want to keep trying to do this, and I don't know that I'll do this forever. I've always said,
Mhm.
like, if there's a cool company with cool people doing cool stuff, like, I'm more than happy to be an employee if there's reasonable expectations that are met.
Mm.
But I do enjoy a lot of what I do. I am able to be like competitive with myself and very intrinsically motivated, sometimes by money, but more often not by money. I think there is just something sacred in being able to be like, I did this myself. This is for me. No one can ever take this away. I don't
Mhm.
want to look back and wonder, could I have? With all respect to everyone else who's out there doing it too, but like, I kind of looked around and I've seen, it's like, wait a minute, if this person is doing it, I better be able to do it. Or I have to
Yeah.
look myself in the mirror and be like, huh, were you a bit over your skis there, buddy? Like, Will, were you a little arrogant? Like, because it's easy to be a critic and like, sit all the way over here and just
Mhm.
look out there of the people who are doing it and say, yeah, I could do that. Okay, well then
Mhm.
go and do it.
Mhm.
So to just like get in the ring, now you've earned your spot a little bit. So that keeps me going. But yeah, it's I'm a never say never guy. So like,
Yeah.
I could be made a great offer with a cool company tomorrow, and I'll be happy about that. So, but for right now, I like that I'm at least trying it. We'll see where it
Mhm.
goes.
Hell yeah. It's all the basics.
Hmm.
I like that we did talk about how our businesses are sort of an experiment, and there are things that have worked and there are things that aren't, and you take that information, and maybe you're not always consciously being like in a spreadsheet, this worked, this didn't, here's the data. I'm not a data analyst. I don't do that, but I am a verbal processor, which is why I have a podcast because I want to talk to people about things. You should ask my boyfriend. He's like, you talk more than anyone else I've ever met in my life. And honestly, sometimes I exhaust myself with the amount I talk, but what I've realized is that the more I talk about it, the more I'm processing it. And that's how I figure out what worked and what didn't. And like, that's how I decide I'm okay with letting go of things. This is why I love working on the business coach. I work with one for the first 3 months of every year, and it's such a good like reset game changer for me. But one of the things that came out of verbal processing was like I spent 2 years making a course, and I realized like I didn't have product market fit. It was too basic. It was too general for what people really needed. Competitors already existed. And when I actually got in the behind the scenes of my competitors' business, I realized that they weren't doing great either in their product market fit. And I was just like, I hate selling this course. I don't want to do it anymore. But I don't want to just kill this 2 years of work that I've done either. And that all came out to be like, I could just put this on YouTube. I've always wanted to have a YouTube channel. This would be like really high quality introductory content for people who are thinking about becoming freelance writers. And then it would lead them to either hiring me as a coach or just having accessible information to be able to start their own business with, which I think everybody deserves. And I've already made it. I'm just going to like throw it away, vault it up because no one will pay for it. Like that's fucked up. I don't want to be that person. So this was like a really cool, I think this is going to work. I'm going to do it. It's not working. What do I do now? Sort of pivot. But I think there are other things that just didn't work where I'm like, I'm just not going to do that again, you know? Like, I'm just not going to work on Upwork anymore because it doesn't work for me. And I'm not going to market on Instagram anymore because it doesn't work for me. What are those things that you mentioned that you realized didn't work?
Oh, wow.
Or just a couple even. You don't have to do everything.
I think like kill your inner perfectionist. Like solopreneurship or going out on your own is where your perfectionist needs to go to die.
Truly.
So I worked on my website. I tried to do it all myself. It's passable. It's fine. The people who have seen it have never complained about it. It gets the job done.
Mm-hmm.
I personally hate it. I was tormented by it. I refused to delegate. I didn't want to pay someone to do it for me. And it was so tedious. And it got to the point where I was in like my second month just like tinkering with like the right font, the right color. What am I doing? That I just had to like punch myself in the face and be like, dude, it's good enough. Like it doesn't have to be this perfect shiny object, just like launch the website. So that was one thing where I noticed like a month too late. Like, what am I spending my time on? This is crazy.
Yep.
I think another thing, and I've been going through this even like real time. Like before my call with you, I just closed a new client, which is fantastic. I'm super happy about it. But that was the product of some like tormenting repositioning for who am I for? And the answer to that is as much of what I may author myself, but also what the market signals back to me of what I'm associated with, the good work that I've done that people want more of and are willing to pay for in these things. And, you know, I have a friend, lots of friends. It's been like a great, just like community that I've had around me and that I'm thankful for, that I share my thoughts with. Because like you, I like to think out loud and process out loud. And even like, you know, here's my notebook, here's my Miro board, here's my Post-it notes.
Yeah.
Just like, here's this abstract way for me to figure out whatever the fuck I'm talking about. And the product of that was, you know, go back a month or two ago. I was too many things to too many people. Like classic don't do that 101 that I know. I'm smart enough to know that. I tell my fucking clients not to do this. Like it's so obvious. But I was so in my own head about the stuff I was doing until I met up with one of my good friends, Jeff Baker. He's been on my podcast. He's been doing this for a while. Within 5 minutes of me showing him what I was struggling with, I had everything figured out because I had someone who I trusted and who, you know, wanted to see me win, who was just like, hey man, did you ever think about this? And I'm not even exaggerating. Within 5 minutes, I had this sheet of paper just filled with all this new stuff I was going to be working on. And since then, it's evolved too. But for me, I was just looking at too big of an audience. And so I refined, and then had those conversations. So I reached out to some communities I'm in to ask for, you know, introductions to founders, not to pitch them as if they would buy from me, but to pitch them so that they could tear it apart. And I've spoken with some like, you know, badass, like, you know, serial entrepreneurs who have kicked my ass all over the ring with what I'm presenting to them in the most constructive way. So they've shredded my pitch and what I talk about and the work I do. And the output of that is this much more refined what I do, who I do it for, the problems I solve on my back end, how
Yeah.
repeatable that is, type of a thing. So getting out of my own head and just
Mhm.
like getting the signals from the market, from a friend who I trust who does this, that has been like my biggest advantage that has helped me shape my business. Because if I was doing
Mm.
it, I would have completely failed by now. I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own. So I've
Mhm.
relied on the real world to give me these signals to be like, yeah, change this and these 100 other things. And then
Yeah.
you sound like you know what you're talking about.
There are so many things that you just said that I feel like are huge lessons that you can only learn through experience. But like, number one, killing the perfectionist inside of you and your ego, kind of, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, being able to accept that feedback, that's huge. So many people would not be able to do that. But in the first place, that perfectionist death, every time someone's like, oh, I've been procrastinating my portfolio, oh, it's been taking me so long, oh, this, oh, that, about like setting up their business, it's because they're being a perfectionist. And I always tell them, like, set a timer for 2 hours. When the 2 hours is up, your portfolio is done. I don't give a shit what it looks like. Put it up. You don't get a choice anymore. Or like pick the easiest possible thing you can do. My new favorite thing is Canva allows you to make a one-page website for free. You can't like customize the domain or anything like that. But for most freelance writers who are just starting out, or like most people who are just starting to offer a service, making a Canva one-page website, there's already a template. It's going to take you less than 2 hours. I guarantee it. And it's so much easier to not be a perfectionist because it's basically already designed for you. All you have to do is pop in your information. I'm like, take it away. It's free. Try it. Just do it. Just get it done. No one needs this. No one needs this agony that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then also, like, yeah, being able to put aside your ego and accept that feedback, but in the first place, be able to ask for help and be able to know where to go to ask for that help.
Yeah. And both of those things are lying to you just in different ways. Like your inner perfectionist is full of shit. That's
Yeah.
really just like your inner excuse maker that like is preventing you because like you're too afraid to send something because it might get judged because it might not be perfect. Nothing's
Mm,
perfect. Get to work, ship it. Now like don't be so reckless that if it's like objectively trash and a disaster, like all right, fix it. But
yeah.
like I feel like a lot of times it's just the voice of resistance in our head because like we're afraid. We're afraid
Yeah.
we might be judged for it. We're afraid, oh, if somebody sees my shitty website that I don't love, I'll never get a lead. I'll never get a client. And I'll die broke and nobody will ever love me. What? Like, but our minds do this where it's like, hang on a minute. Like, that's not real at all. This one page template works perfectly fine. Ship it, move on. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. We're really good at telling stories.
Oh yeah. And convincing ourselves of our own bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. So you basically started out by just like taking whatever work came your way and working with people you'd worked with before. How did you get, like, you eventually will either run out of things to do or you'll realize, like, I don't want to be a generalist for these people anymore. I want to do what I want to do. I want to be able to, like, have repeatable systems to make my business more efficient. All of these things that you were mentioning where you were like seeking that feedback. Have you repositioned yourself and started seeking out work with ideal clients, or are you still sort of just taking work that comes your way?
A little bit of both. And sometimes it's nice, like happily meeting in the middle. So
Mm.
if I work with a company or a founder or whoever, and they really just want me to be like an order taker, that doesn't feel good for the kind of work that I want to do because a lot of times I come in and I help figure out what problem needs to be solved, which means you come in intentionally ambiguous. It's kind of a trust fall of like, okay, like I'm going to pay you for the first 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks, depending on the size of the organization and the complexity of what they're in, to figure out what to prioritize.
Mm.
Sometimes it is just easier to work directly with an executive on something that like they're very confident they need executed anyways and just executing. And then you've demonstrated you can do the work the way they want it done in the time they need it done and you've adapted to like their working rhythm. Now it's like, okay, what else we got? So I think at first I was a bit resistant to just like come in at the level of here's the tasks I want completed.
Mhm.
And I said no to some of those things. Whereas now, depending on what it is, I'm a bit more warm to it, because sometimes it just like it earns you a seat at the table, and that's your ticket to like higher value contracts or becoming a deeper partner. Or halfway through it, you might say, "You told you so." Like this was actually why we needed to validate this. Or you're looking too downstream at the tactics, and it's not the tactics; it's your culture. So we need to do work over here at the level of the organization, depending on what it is. So yeah, sometimes I think it's in between, but it's all ongoing. I'm very open to, how this space adapts to me, and then I adapt to it.
Yeah, I think that that's the makings of a successful business, because a lot of us think, like, when we first start out, we think about, like, you go to a store and you see these boxes on the shelf and you're offered what you offer, and each box has a specific price and that's what it is. Whereas the people who are, they know what their core competencies are and they advertise a specific few, but if someone asks them to do other things that they can do, you offer a package. Like, I have a general pricing guide. There's one page in each for each service that I have. I have my baseline rates on there, so I know I can't go below these rates. Every time I get a new potential client, I do the discovery call with them. I say, I'm going to send you a pricing guide after our call, unless they have like, we only pay writers X, Y, and Z, whatever. And after the call, I go and look up the company. I look up their revenue. I look up their valuation. I look up their funding. I look up how much profit they most likely make from which areas and how much they pay their employees. And then I look at my pricing guide again and I think about, like, does this service drive revenue? Does this service add an evergreen value that they're going to use for a long time? And I slowly tweak my prices for each client. So while my general pricing guides base packages are like 3 tiers of the amount of blog posts you could get, and a standard rate for a multi-service retainer, and an hourly rate for doing this, and like an email welcome series is X amount of money, I'm going to change those prices based on the client every single time. And there are some clients where it was like a passion project in the outdoor industry, and I have always wanted to work for Far Out. They make the Guidebook app that I used for through hiking the Appalachian Trail. I think it is one of the most genius products out there. When I was using it, I was like, there are so many things these people could be doing that would be so cool. And I hadn't even gotten into marketing yet at that point. And then once I got into marketing, like, I kept seeing them around. They did a rebrand. I saw them at, I see question on your face.
I think I accidentally hit mark clip. I don't know what I did.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah,
Okay.
it's fine. It's will auto generate clips after the episode.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're good. Yeah, so I always thought it would be cool to work for them, and I saw them at Trail Days a couple of years ago, which is like an Appalachian Trail festival. And I went up to them and I gave them my business card, and I was like, if you're ever like looking for a marketer, I'm freelance, I'm happy to help you like on contract. And they were like super busy and clearly not paying attention to me. And I was like, okay, I probably didn't get that. And I followed up with them after in an email, and I connected with them on LinkedIn, and they did not respond. And then 2 years later, after I followed up with them like 5 times, someone else that I had worked with in the outdoor industry referred me. They were like, you should go work with Rachel. She'd be great at that. They reached out to me again and they were like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize we'd already connected. I'm so sorry we didn't get back to you earlier. We'd love to work with you now. It was like the 50th time that I was reminded that sometimes it takes a long time to get a client from when you plant the seed, and that no doesn't mean no. But it was also a passion project. I knew that their budget wasn't as big as most software companies. I knew they didn't have funding and things like that. So I charged them my like baseline hourly rate of like what I actually need to make. But there are other companies, like a startup that makes $30 million a year and got $200 million in funding and all this other crazy financials, where I'm like, no, you're going to get my reach rate. You're going to get the rate that makes me feel like I'm going to throw up to propose to you, but I can propose it and I know that it is like valid in this arena. And they pick it. They pick it every time, and it's always okay, but it's always a puzzle. It's always a balancing act. I sort of have this chart. I should make a LinkedIn post about this actually. I made this workbook about like how to make your packages and how to price things and how to create a pricing guide. It's like all basically like how you present what you do and what it costs to your potential clients. And there's a chart in there that I made. On the y-axis, there's like how much the package costs, like $1 sign, $2 sign, $3 sign. Because I always tell people to like set your rates in 3 tiers. Your baseline hourly rate, what you absolutely have to make. The $2 signs is like your goal rate. Like, I wish I would make this. It would give me more of a buffer. And then your reach rate, $3 signs. I'm scared to charge this, but I know that if I charge this, my life would be awesome. And then the x-axis is like the size and length of the package. So there's like the one-off packages that are short term and like you did all this legwork to get this client, so you have to charge them extra because they just want one thing, and it's like, I'm not gonna throw away the 2 hours it took to get you. And then the mid-tier packages, which are like someone who wants blog posts from you every 2 blog posts a month, say, and they're going to do that for 6 months to a year. And you're not really sure when they're going to drop you, but eventually they'll probably decide they're done with you. And then the longest term package, which is like a 1-year contract with a purchase order, with a guaranteed retainer, or like a giant ebook that's like 8,500 words. That's obviously going to bolster you. And you sort of have to ride those axes. Like, if you're going to get that ad hoc, single project, high price client, cool, but that's only going to last a month. So you need someone on the other end of the spectrum that's longer term, and they're probably going to be paying you less because it's long term, it's guaranteed, it's routine, and that's okay. But they balance each other out. Or that passion project with Far Out was balanced out by a really big short-term ebook project that made up for the difference in pricing. So you're sort of always doing this balancing puzzle act, and your rates are sort of liquid, but they're in a container of those 3 tiers. And you have this like puzzle, but it's kind of made out of those like squishy fidget toys that you get at the toy store. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But I feel like that is so much different. Like, puzzle pieces made out of Jell-O is entirely different than cereal boxes that are exactly $6 each, that you know what you're getting all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, what we're doing is exploring like structured nuance. So there was a lot of thinking and a lot of spreadsheet math and a lot of considering that goes into the front end. That is this, quadrant of axes, which is basically, time is money type of considerations.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it doesn't even have to like trust your instincts in the context of this type of like quadrant that you've built. And like, I've said yes to projects that are just really cool people. It's not an exorbitant amount of time. It's a rate that on paper I'm not like super proud of. And I also don't care because I'm doing good work with good people, and it's fine. It's fun. I can get it done. Some of the work is even easy. It's they mean it when they say thank you. Like, that feels good. So maybe that's me being a bad operator. We're like, no, I will only fight for the $1 million opportunities. But I'm kind of like, look, like that may come. Like, if I'm helping a much smaller company, they're doing like, they're scratching 1 million ARR. There's not enough of the pie to pay everybody what they want yet. So if you double or triple or 10x them, and you were in earlier and you've stuck around, then like, sure, you've earned your way there. It's a bet that you take, and you have those trade-offs. But like, what you might read with some of like the dogma that's out there is like, well, that's bad practice. You should never do that. Says who? I don't care. Who are you to tell me what I should and shouldn't do? Like, it's it's a couple hours a week with some really cool people. I like working with them.
Yeah.
Sorry I broke your golden rule. Like, okay, I guess that makes me a bad solopreneur, right?
I think it's important to treat your business like it's yours. Like, you can do whatever the fuck you want. No one's here. That's part of the whole, like, no one's going to give you the job title. No one's going to sign your permission slip. I mean, I'll fucking sign it right now for you if you want. But like, No one's going to sign your permission slip. You're not a child anymore. You can do whatever you want. Your business is yours, and you'll know what's working and what's not. When you're dreading showing up to do work with somebody, even though they're paying you $1 million a year, it's not working. That's not sustainable. You're going to get burnt out just because you're fighting yourself. When you are stoked to show up to this 3-person startup team every Friday for your 3 hours where they pay you $50 an hour when you should be getting paid $150 an hour, who the fuck cares?
Exactly.
That is what is going to fill you up, right?
Yeah.
And that is why we have anchor clients and we have passion clients.
Yeah.
The anchor clients make sure your bills get paid. You only need 1 or 2 of them. And then you can have 3 or 4 like really fun, exciting clients that like bring the light to your life.
Exactly. Yeah. And like it's a small karmic universe. You never know where those small companies that you're betting on will go. They might blow up, but you might do great work with them and they may refer you somewhere else. So
yes,
that's at least right now how I'm operating, and the things I'm saying yes to and saying no to is it's more dimensions than just, can I charge them 5 times what I've ever charged any client before? Like, I'd like to. I've certainly tried that, but there's a bit more to it. And
yeah,
some of it is just like, just cool people doing cool work that makes an impact that people are appreciative of. Fine with me. Fine with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that, like, what I guess the important part is treating your business like an experiment. It's really easy to get caught up in it having to be this perfectly organized, standardized thing all the time. But when you treat it like an experiment, you get all these opportunities you would never have before. And there's also this aspect of learning and getting paid to learn, essentially. Like when you're a new solopreneur, even though you maybe know how to do your skill, I mean, I had no idea how to do digital marketing. So I was both learning how to run a business and do the skill that I was charging people to do for them. But the best part about taking those underpaid inside jobs at places I was passionate about, one of my favorite examples is when I worked for Coding Dojo. They were like this really small startup coding boot camp. They were one of the more affordable coding boot camps, which I really liked, and they had a lot of different types of programs. So it was more accessible than, say, a $20,000 boot camp or whatever. And the people who worked there were just fun. They met 3 days a week. I had never had regular meetings with a client before. They like put me in their Slack. I was doing junior copywriting for them for email. I'd never done email marketing before in my life. I got paid $50 an hour, which is like honestly less than I should have taken once I saw my tax bill that year. But like the best part of it was that for the first 3 months, I was basically just getting paid to learn. And then after that, I learned how to make an email content calendar. I learned how to understand their demographics. I like doubled their click-through rates and their open rates because I was experimenting. They let me A/B test anything I wanted. And A/B testing was like the most exciting thing to me when I first found out what it was. I was like, why didn't I know this existed before? This is incredible. And I basically got paid to learn. And then that department essentially dismantled itself, and those people now work in other places. And the amount of referrals I've gotten from that, the way that I've been able to use email marketing to build my own business now because I learned that there, like, who the fuck cares that I got paid $55 an hour for 6 months to work 16 hours a week from them? It paid my baseline bills. I learned the most amazing skills. I got fantastic referrals from those people. And now I'm charging like $3,500 a month to do half that amount of hours for other companies. And I am just like, I could shout from the rooftops how much I love email marketing.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite things. But that journey to get there did not look like what I thought it would in my head. Like I thought, oh, you take a class, you make a portfolio, you go sell the service, you get paid. And it always looks like the cereal box and you raise your rates every year. But what it really looks like is getting in wherever you can get a foot in the door, charging what you can, and eventually ooching up from that. Each email client I got after that, I was like, okay, I got paid $55 there. Now I'm going to charge $75. Now I'm going to charge $100. Now I'm going to charge $150. It's never linear and like clean like you want it to.
Yeah. No, and that I think that perfectly represents like the real experience to be expected instead of, okay, I never done this before and I'm charging $1,250 an hour or something like crazy. And it's, look, maybe you can. Again, maybe you got lucky, maybe it worked out for you, go for it. But like even what you just shared with like the email case study, like I've recently said yes to work that at the level of how I've messaged and positioned myself and what's on my website, it doesn't totally jive with what I've put out there. However, it's work I'm great at with cool people that I like doing. And no one needs to know that. So just because you're
Mhm.
doing it, like I remember I hesitated saying yes to some of this work because I felt in conflict with some of what I told the market I do. And then I look at my own back end and I'm breaking all these rules of like, well, wait, it's not a factory. It's not productized. It's not perfectly repeatable. It's going to take a little bit longer over here. So what? Who cares? I said yes to it. It's going great. And I don't need to now go and completely remessage everything, that I've told the market I am yet. Maybe I will do a full 180 and this work will now become what is an evolution of what I have been doing until the point where it's like, great, now I'm squarely in this space servicing this niche for these people, for these problems. Great, fine. But you don't have to. And like,
Mhm.
so what? That was one thing that I felt like in conflict with because, I have a podcast. I talk about this stuff. There's these certain cardinal rules you're supposed to adhere to. And I felt like I was breaking some of them. But like,
Mhm.
fuck it. Let's break them. Who cares? Like, it doesn't change anything. And so like, there's irrational ways to interpret some of these like, dogma
Mhm.
rules that are out there. Do what you do, figure it out, treat it as an experiment, see if the work is good and pays, and if you can go up market charging for those rates, and if it feels good doing with cool people, whatever. Trust your
Mhm.
instincts. But yeah, it's weird that like, you see like the definitive guide and what you should do. And then
Mhm.
you move away from stuff that is not, in perfect harmony with the golden rules. Fuck those rules. Like eventually you kind of just like need to do what works for you. And then eventually, yeah, like it can hopefully be on a path towards something more lucrative, something more fulfilling, or not. And now you've experienced that. You can scratch it on the list and now more clearly say no to it.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Um, we did talk a little bit last time we chatted about like community and finding people, and we've talked about the people that you talk to about your business behind the scenes. Aside from like people that you've worked with in the past at your full-time jobs, how did you go about like finding community with entrepreneurs and just finding people that you could talk to?
Yeah. So I'm in some Slack communities. I know sometimes like just because you have a Slack community doesn't make it a community. I'm in agreement with that. Like you can't just be like, oh, okay, we're all here. Like, so what? There has to be actually something like coherent to what it is.
Yeah.
But I've been lucky to be part of some really cool communities. One is called Growth Tribe. I'm a member of Pavilion. I've been in some other ones where people are very generous. Like even just, you're there for a purpose. I've exited the communities where people are there just to pitch or just to extract value. So yeah, being a contributing member of some of these communities with other people who are just like you, just like me, they have some answers you don't. They're making a lot of things up as they go along, like anyone else is too. But yeah, just finding like cool people to collaborate with or to bounce ideas off of has been something that's been great for me. And honestly, even on LinkedIn too, with like
Mhm.
increasing frequency, I try and make some time every week to talk with strangers just because I like to, and you never know what's going to come around. Depends on the week. Sometimes it's like zero. Other times it's like two, maybe three if it's a slower week or something. But just internet strangers who you connect with on LinkedIn, if you're commenting on each other's posts or whatever it might be, just be like, hey, like, would you want to have a virtual coffee on Zoom? You're a human. I'm a human. Let's not just communicate in the comments section. You want to chat for 15 minutes? I like doing that too.
That's perfect. I also really like using LinkedIn to I don't want to say get coffee chats, but like set up coffee chats with people. I do them on Thursdays and I only do like one or two a week. But when I do them, I find that I get a lot of referrals from it and also just meet really fun people. And it's cool because you get to like comment back and forth on other people's posts
Yeah.
and get to know other people in your industry. And there's some insider info I feel like I've gotten to learn from that as well. That's like oh, you know, like stuff that I just never would have known about certain industries. Like when I wanted to start an agency, I was like really thinking about starting an agency for a while. I went on LinkedIn and I messaged a bunch of people that had lean agencies and was like, can we just have a coffee chat for like 15 minutes if you have time? And every single one of them said yes. And I asked them all the same 5 questions. And afterwards, I was like, wow, I feel like I really confidently could start an agency. And I actually know way more about being an agency than I thought that I did. But then at the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I have to be responsible for other people. I don't
Payroll.
know if I want that.
Yeah, that's different.
That's new. So it was really helpful to be able to talk to people about that. And now those agencies often either refer me to the clients that they can't take on or ask me, oh, do you know a writer who would be good for this? Or do you know, so I can help the other writers in my community. They can help their agency. I potentially get clients from it. And we comment on each other's LinkedIn posts, which boosts them too. And it's just such a nice, like, symbiotic experience. And I'll second the Slack groups too. I'm in Old Girls Club, and then I also have my Slack group, Pop Club. And both of those things are like, it feels like those people are my coworkers now. You know what I mean? I've never had a full time, I've had temporary, seasonal, full time office jobs, but I've never been like a corporate girly by any means. And it's been really cool to like have coworkers, and I'll get on huddles on Slack with some of my community members, and we'll do like co-working and things like that. And it's just such a special relationship because freelancing and just solopreneurship can be so lonely, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know whose quote I'm stealing, but working for yourself doesn't mean you have to work by yourself. And I think like the community aspect of it and the connections that you make are great commercially because people can refer you work, you can refer them work. Like now you're just connected to opportunities more than if you were not in these places. But also just it feels good just to be like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm stuck. Can you look at this and can I bounce ideas off of you? Can I vent? Like I get this client. Have you ever dealt with this? Yeah, there's some catharsis that's out there too. That's nice.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, hell yeah. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your podcast before we go. Can you share the name of your podcast and what you talk about on there?
Yes, it's called Solopreneur Stories. I speak to seasoned, new solopreneurs, people who have been doing this for like 20 years, about the insights that they're learning, the challenges they're facing, their story about how they landed there, what's working, what's not, the emotions, the bookkeeping, the strategy, all of the stuff. We get into it, and it's been great.
Perfect. Thanks, Will. Thanks for coming on today too. And I'm so glad we got to meet each other. So we also talked about last time we chatted about having an in-person meetup, and I still want to make that happen. So we'll have to talk about that later.
Yeah, speaking of communities, we might
Yeah.
launch one. We'll see what happens in the Northeast here.
Yeah. If you live in New England or in New York, upstate New York, keep your ears peeled, I guess, or your
Stay
eyes on
tuned.
LinkedIn. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Will.
Thank you.